Every human first 7 years is download. The brain of a child under 7 is in a lower vibrational frequency. When you put wires on a person's head, you read electroencephalograph, reading brain activity. A child below 7 has a lower vibration than consciousness. It's called theta. Theta is imagination. Oh, that's how kids play a tea party with mud pies, but to them it's a real thing. A kid rides a broom, it's a horse. That's theta, imagination. And the idea is this: before you can become conscious, if you don't have any programs, what are you going to be conscious of? It's sort of like I buy a new iPod and I take it out of the box and I push play and nothing happens, and you think, oh my God, I spent all the money and the damn thing isn't working. And then some little 7-year-old kid comes up and says, well, mister, you didn't download any music. How are you going to play something? And I go, that's the same thing. It's like the brain is like the iPod. Consciousness is the screen where I can create. But if I don't have anything in the hard drive, I can't create. So nature makes the first 7 years. What kind of programs are required to live on this planet? I say, how do you get them? You just watch. You watch your parents, you watch your siblings, and your community, because you have to learn how many 100,000 rules. Think about it. Just to be a functional member of a family and a functional member of a community, there are rules. Teach an infant these rules. I say, oh, you don't have to. First 7 years, they observe it and just download it. And then I say, well, why is it relevant? Because this is the unfortunate fact. 95% of our life, this is a fact, comes from those programs in the subconscious. Every day, only about 5% of their life are you using conscious, which is creative. 5%.
So your life is being lived, even though you think you're living your life.
Exactly, and you don't see it because it's called subconscious, below conscious. And the Jesuits, for 400 years, they were boasting. People didn't understand. They say, give me a child until it's 7 and I will show you the man. They've been saying that for 400 years because they knew 7 years was the program period. And 95% of your life after that will be whatever that program is. Passed on. So behavior is passed on, not like genes. It's passed on through families, right, but it's passed on through learning in families. Okay. Well, we have to recognize, number one, that 95% of our behavior is coming from subconscious. So a child is going to record for 7 years, and they're going to record you. You have a new baby. That baby is going to look at you because you are the parent. The first thing a baby learns in the first week or two of life, who's the parent? Very important, because that's the reference point. If anything goes in their life, they're going to look at the parent first thing. A child on a playground is on a swing, falls off the swing on the ground. First thing it does is look at the parent. If the mother's like, ah, the kid starts crying. But if the mother goes, get up and get back on the swing, the kid gets back up on the swing. It's reflection. So you have to recognize a child is going to observe every move of you. Then you also have to recognize, well, hell, if 95% of it is coming from my invisible programming, I'm going to pass on the family pattern unconsciously. 95% of that. The whole the pattern of growing up, the programming.
Okay. Unless I make a conscious effort?
The conscious effort to change your programming. It's very hard to stay conscious. This is why we always go back into the subconscious, because when you're thinking, that's a conscious mind function. So, Brian, what are you doing on Tuesday? If I ask you that, the answer's not out here, it's inside. So the moment you're thinking, you let go of driving the vehicle because you went inside. I go, well, it doesn't mean whatever you're doing, you stop walking or driving the car or doing a job. Those are programs in the subconscious because you've repeated them over and over again. So the subconscious is autopilot. When the conscious is busy, autopilot drives the vehicle. Point is, when conscious is busy, it's not observing what's going on. So let's say we're having this conversation in a car, and I've been driving for 10 minutes, and we've had this great conversation, and all of a sudden I look out the window, I go, I haven't paid attention to the road while we have the conversation. But I go back and say, can I say what the conversation was about? Yeah, we talked about this and this and this. And I say, and what was on the road during that 10 minutes? You go, I don't know, I wasn't paying attention. See, that's when the subconscious, so I say, how was your driving? And I go, it was whatever way you learned how to drive. If you had a bad driving instructor, then you were driving 10 minutes with lousy driving.
Okay. So how can I change that then? I need to be more conscious of my subconscious?
You have to be conscious of you see, here's the problem. 7 years is programming. And I say, well, what program did you get when you were 0 or 1? You go, I have no idea what the hell the program was. I say, 95% of your life is coming from the subconscious. Your life is a printout of your subconscious behavior. Oh, so you don't have to try and think about what happened. I just say, look at your life. The things you like that come into your life come in because you have a program that supports them. But anything you struggle with, work hard at, put a lot of effort into making it happen, why you're working so hard, inevitably you have a program that doesn't support that conclusion and you're trying to override the program. So you don't need to do a lot of shrink and psychology stuff. You just look at your life and say, where am I struggling? Because wherever you're struggling, inevitably it's a program in your subconscious that does not support that destination you've been looking for.
Okay.
I'm happy. I say, well, you don't look happy or anything. You say, no, who am I talking to? By repetition, I'm talking to subconscious.
Okay.
If subconscious gets, I am happy, and 95% of your life comes from that subconscious, there will be a point once the subconscious got, I am happy, you don't have to say it again.
Okay.
It'll be automatic.
And that's why we see people do affirmations and gratitude journals and stuff, because if you do that daily.
It's repetitive. That's the secret part. Putting a sticky note on the refrigerator is more like a suggestion, but it's not a repetition. So it doesn't work very well. But you have to do, repetition is a habit. It's making habit. So you got to do something religiously in the sense of repeating it to make it work. Okay, when I say genetic control, that's the belief that genes control our characters. When I say epigenetic control, almost sounds the same, but epi means above. So when I say epigenetic control, literally it's control above the genes. And this is what we now recognize, that the environment, and very specifically our perception of the environment, changes our genetic activity. So that means, well, wait, that's not a victim because I can change my environment, I can change my perception, and all of a sudden, if I can do that, then I can control my genes. Well, we're going from victim to mastery, from genetics to epigenetics.
Okay.
So, for example, when when parents have one child, they raise it like the first child. Okay, I raised the child this way. After that, if they have a second child, well, they already have all the different experiences of having a child. So they raise the second child different than they did the first child, et cetera, to the third. What's the point is, well, I can start with the same genetics, like my stem cells, same genetics, but it's the environment in which the genes are found that will determine the character and expression. And so let's separate genes in two aspects. There's genes that make a physical body. So that's like the robotic. Here it is. It's a machine, okay? But there are genes on how it's going to behave and how it's going to respond and what kind of issues it's going to face. Those are the changeable ones that we change from day to day, your behavior and the consequences of your behavior, okay? It's not changing the genes. It's changing the readout. So the simple point is a gene is a blueprint. Right away, this is the biggest problem in the world because the idea of a gene must be an illusion to a lot of people. There's something called a gene and it turns on and off. And it goes, no, let's clear this up. A body is made out of 100,000 different protein building blocks. It's sort of like a giant Lego kit. 100,000 different pieces. You can assemble the pieces this way, make a muscle cell, assemble them this way, make a brain cell. Different pieces, you can plug them together. The pieces are called proteins. They're very complex. The question is, where the heck do the proteins come from? And the answer is the DNA is a blueprint to make a protein. This is where things get dicey after that for this reason. It's a blueprint. That's exactly what it is. And I say, why is it relevant? I say, well, you go into an architect's office and she's working on a blueprint. You lean over her shoulder and you say, excuse me, is your blueprint on or off? And she'd look at you and go, what, are you crazy? It's a blueprint. There's no on or off. Precisely. A gene is a blueprint. It has no ability to turn itself on or off. A gene doesn't know what the hell it does. And the idea is giving all this power to a blueprint has been an error all these years. It's not the blueprint that we're concerned about. It's the contractor who reads the blueprint. And I say, well, what in my biology is the contractor? I go, the mind.
Okay.
Let's relate my laboratory experience to a human body so that we can connect it. A stem cell is an embryonic cell. We have billions of stem cells in our body right now. I don't care what age you are. The reason is very simple. Every one of us, every day, loses hundreds of billions of cells, normal attrition, normal death. I mean, just in the time we were talking, we probably lost 1 billion red cells in that time. And you got to replace 1 billion red cells. The lining of the digestive tract, 20-some feet of lining, the cells are replaced every 3 days. Well, that's nearly 1 trillion cells. It's like, well, every day we're losing hundreds of billions. How many days in a row can you go if you don't replace And the answer is not very far. So I say, oh, well, we have stem cells, embryonic cells, that will replace them. So that's what a stem cell is.
Okay.
So I put a stem cell in a petri dish, it's embryonic cell, and I make culture medium. And this is really important because we're going to talk about the connection. The culture medium is the equivalent of blood. If I grow human cells, I look at human blood, the composition, and try to make a version of it in a lab. If I grow mouse cells, I look at mouse blood and make a medium to grow mouse cells in. So I make the medium, and since I'm making it, I can change some of the composition. I'm synthesizing it. That's what I did. So here's the story, very simple. I put one stem cell in a petri dish by itself, and it divides every 10 or 12 hours. So first there's 1, then there's 2, 4, 8, 16, doubling. 1 week, 30,000 cells in the petri dish. But they're all genetically identical because they came from one parent. So I have 30,000 genetically identical cells. I split the cells into 3 petri dishes, so I have genetically identical cells in 3 dishes. But I changed the composition of the culture medium, a little chemistry change, in each of the dishes. So I have genetically identical cells, but slightly different culture medium. And in one set of dishes, the cells form muscle. In a second set, they form bone. In a third set, the cells form fat cells. You say, well, what controlled the fate? I say, they were all genetically identical. So it wasn't the genes. They all had the exact same genes. The only thing that was different was the environment.
Okay. So it's how those genes were expressed.
Right, but it was a reflection of the environment. So the cell is adjusting itself to the environment. Change the environment, it changes its adjustment.